we actually invited three people from various backgrounds, different continents, to come and share their experience in their diverse markets, but basically and primarily also from their experience. On the most right-hand side for you, Chris Longo is the CEO of AmTrust Financial, Mark Klein, the Chief Digital Officer of Ergo Group, and Li Yang, the CEO of MetLife's LumenLab in Singapore. But first let's start with briefly introducing yourselves. Li, can I ask you to...
Hi, my name is Li, and a lot of people ask me, how do you pronounce my last name? Ng, no vowels. Can I buy a vowel? So it's So I'm the COO for LumenLab, which is a MetLife Innovation Center. And at our Innovation Center, our goal is to do two things. One, cultural transformation for the company, and secondly, to create new value-creating businesses for MetLife.
Yeah, a few words to me, Mark Klein. I'm responsible for the digitalization of Ergo Group, which is a strong footprint in Germany, but in other 30 markets around the world. I'm working now 8 months in insurance, so I'm pretty fresh to the industry. I'm coming out of telecommunication. My last role, I was the CEO of T-Mobile Netherlands, so every fourth Dutchman was my customer. And there we were very digital. So my job is it now to really drive the cultural transformation in the company, to drive the innovation management, and to use digital technology to create new business systems. Basically using digital technology to transform our current business model and improve it. We are creating a startup ourselves to disrupt the existing business model of insurance. And we are building new business models in a kind of B2B2C way together with the automotive industry. And running that business and making it happen is, so to say, my job to do.
All right. I'm Chris Longo. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Information Officer for AmTrust Financial. AmTrust Financial operates, we have 140 offices around the world. We operate in 60 different countries. And we have a very wide variety of product offerings. My job is to lead the technological direction of the corporation. It has been since 2000. And also from an operations standpoint, making sure that we're able to achieve our strategic goals, plan for our strategic goals, and make sure that all of our different business units and operating units have the tools that they need to achieve those goals. So hopefully that helps in some of our discussions today.
Well, let me then ask you immediately the first question. Chris, looking at your experience, your view, what is the most important disruptor of the current situation in insurance? Is it a certain technology such as artificial intelligence? We learned so much about that this morning. Or is it about consumer trends? Or what is really going to disrupt the industry as we know it?
We were talking a little bit in the back just about disruption. AmTrust, you may not know them, we're a fairly young company. As you talk about MetLife, it's hundreds of years old. We've acquired companies that are hundreds of years old, but AmTrust, in insurance terms, is a fairly young company. It's a young entrepreneurial, and we're not afraid to take risk. So in the early 2000s, we actually did disrupt a very large market in the U.S., one of the larger P&C markets, and that's workers' compensation or employers' liability. 15 short years later, because of that disruption, we used technology to do this, and our use of data, we were able to position ourselves as the second or third largest writer from a premium standpoint in the U.S. in that market. And if you were to look at actual policy unit count, we are the #1 provider of that type of insurance in the U.S. because we target small businesses, your mom and pop shops, your Main Street business. So we did that through data and technology. And I think one of the biggest disruptors is the use of data. What I find most intriguing is the data. If you talk about the Internet of Things, the information, telematics, the information that's made available. If you look at a company that was here 30 years ago, what did you have available to you? User-generated data, largely, what they told you about the risk. But now it's interesting the amount of data that's available to us, the devices that are sending the data, and the correlations that you can draw about your consumer for the specific product that wasn't there 10 years ago. So for me, the most exciting thing is data science and what it'll bring. It's still relatively young. It's a spooky language. I have an actuarial background. I wasn't a good actuary, obviously, because I didn't go forward with that. But but I have an appreciation for it. And that's, to me, what data science, the use of data is going to bring, and the new data that's being made available through us through the Internet of Things and the different devices is ushering in a whole new way to look at products, price products, and do risk selection. And that's...
What also was quite striking for me this morning when I looked through the presentations, it was also about artificial intelligence used to innovate customer engagement.
And think of the information that you're capturing through that artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So they're capturing the entire conversation that you're potentially having. What more are you gleaning from your customers? You know, their behavior, how they're answering questions, when they're bailing out. That's...
And turning that into really new conversations also for customers and new added value.
Absolutely.
But let me build on that. For sure, the technology is somehow a disruptor. But when I look at us as an insurance being 150 years in business, the key challenge is not the technology. I think that is available. The question is, how do we change our culture to be open to implement that things and do not put it away? And I think you're a very young company, so for your company it's natural to embrace these new technologies. We have to really open our minds and accept that these chances are there and that we use them really in our core processes, because the technology is available. Now we can directly implement, but the culture is not ready to open up. And digitalization is not about one big silver bullet that will change the world. It's about many, many improvements that you do along the value chain, which has to be done by the people working in that processes. And that's why the culture for me is the key challenge we are facing. And that's why these young companies or younger companies have a better start. And here we really need to speed up to change our culture and open it up.
That's culture. Both you and Lee mentioned the change of business models. Is that something that you can elaborate on?
Yeah, well, I think that together with digital technology, you have the chance really to implement and start new business models. So that's why we are, when you look at how do we change our landscape, we for sure change and work on the core, which is a lot of cultural transformation, and we use in technology to improve our processes in the core. But we also try to go at the edge of our organization, which means we have founded a new company, which is really acting like a startup, 14 people, pure digital player, implementing all the technologies under a different brand, different housing, different rules, and we bring a new business model there to life to challenge ourselves.
So that's beyond the edge, actually.
Yeah, it is still inside. The thing is, it's still inside the company, so it's 100% daughter, which makes it easy to invite the CEO to our board meetings and give really a fresh presentation what is possible. And there you see how my colleagues are basically seeing in what speed we are developing there, while in the core it takes much longer. But we are also moving outside, and that is collaborating with other companies in the business. And the automotive, I think, is here, automotive and insurance, there are a lot of synergies. Because they are in a big transformation, we are in a big transformation, self-driving cars, who is owning the car at the end, and who is insuring that car at the end. And that's why I think that is a good, and you can use a lot of technology to make that happen.
Yeah, tomorrow morning, actually BMW is going to present as well, and we're looking forward, basically because there are so much adjacencies between the two that there's a lot of things these two sectors can do together.
I fully agree.
But Lee, what could you add to with your experience?
I think I'd like to add on to what the two gentlemen said, which is that I think there are a lot of technology that's going to influence our industry in the next few years. And actually the difficulty isn't for people to imagine an end state where some of these technology would be very interesting, like digital customer experience, like automated underwriting using AI and so on. I think the biggest challenge that almost all companies have, especially the incumbents, are what I call the knowing-doing gap. So a lot of things we know. Like, for example, if I ask you 10 years from now, can you imagine that most of the insurance are going to be sold online without insurance? Most executives will say, oh, yes, I can see it. But if today your business is 90% agent-driven, what is your path forward? That's what everybody struggles with. And part of the reason is because, as you said, even though we're in the risk business, we don't like to take risk. So we're gonna have people propose something, study it, do competitive analysis, do a lot of analysis. And the reality is that, even though we know 10 years from now what's gonna happen, or we have some imagination of that, it is very hard at this point to say, oh, picking AI doing this is going to be the right path. Doing this kind of digital, going to this particular platform is going to be the right move. And because we want the warm and fuzzy and do analysis, that's what's really killing our ability to make progress. And that's why you will hear me say the word test and learn a lot. Because I think test and learn is the only way you can go. I spent 21 years in Silicon Valley. Startup, it's all about test and learn.
I would like to balance it a bit, but maybe also getting your input. When I have the discussion in Germany, I met one who is responsible for the BaFin, for the regulation. And I was early in the company and I said, yeah, we're going to go digital now. We're going to test a lot of things. We might make a failure, but we're going to try it out. And then he looked at me and he said, Mr. Klein, you can try a lot, but mistakes are not possible. And I said, and for me that was a bit, and that is a bit the contradiction, yeah? How do you bring that together? And at the moment, at least in my mind, I think there are areas where it might be really a challenge when you do a failure. Like in life insurance, when you have 60-year contracts, you cannot bet a lot, but you can comment on that. That's the feedback I always get. So there are areas where a mistake is not a problem, not an option. But there are many, many other areas where you can test a lot. All the customer front ends, all the P&C policies that you can write. And here we really have to progress much, much faster. And in some other areas, it might be more difficult, so we have to be a bit more cautious potentially.
And the test and learn is essential, and that has to be part of the culture of the company. And it also is, it's a sales job internally. It's our job to sell, the value add that we're bringing with this tech. The test and learn, what the risk is associated with it. And a lot of it comes down to how you mitigate that risk. And that's what you're selling to the internal C-suite, the executives, is that we're not looking to fail, but we're mitigating our risk. So if we do fail, we're going to minimize that. We're just going to go on one region. We're going to pick one product. We're going to pick, the biggest challenge I have, I was talking to you about this backstage, is even though we're young, we're entrepreneurial, we're willing to take a chance on a new technology. Let's go to test. Let's pick a focus group. Okay, well, what's a focus group? Oh, we can pick 10 people. Well, what are 10 people going to tell you? That's not an experience. You don't have data points. There's not enough to test or to evaluate what happened. So a lot of it is, that's the challenge, is to make it a credible test, is to get enough, enough of a coalition built within the corporation to take a test. We're going to pick an entire region, an entire product to go live. And we're going to turn it on for 1 month. And then we're going to come back, evaluate, and then maybe 3 months later we'll do a more bold launch. And you do that on many fronts with many different pieces of technology, and you have to be able to take those baby steps. You have to prove it out before you are bold enough to take it the full step.
Now, Mark, we also see a lot of insurance companies actually anticipating this important barrier by investing in fintechs to accelerate innovation and the adoption of technologies. What are in your view, the success factors to do that?
Yeah, well, basically, it's always a question: do you invest, yes or no, or do you partner? So at the end, when you invest, you really have to have a clear business model behind it, from my perspective. So you should do it not only for strategic reasons. Then you pick the wrong one. If you really want to enter venture capital, you have to be a credible player. That means you need a track record, because otherwise the good startups never would come to you. Yeah? As we have seen with the analysis, they know exactly when you are with this venture capital firm, you have a high opportunity to earn some money. So you have to build credibility. In the working together with startups, I think it's a lot of open and transparent communication. We are working at the moment with Ergo Direct. We have had the presentation with about 6 to 7 startup companies where we integrate their services into our core processes. And we have some cases that run well. Others really cause a lot of frustration on both sides. Normally what I've seen is, on the one hand, you have the insurtech startup that is promising a lot. So they do their marketing also to their partner. I can just recommend, don't do that. Yeah? Don't do the marketing to your partner. Be open what you can and what you can't deliver, because otherwise it's very frustrating. On the other hand, we are a much larger company, so our processes are slower. And what we have to do is to really speed up as much as we can, because we think that 3 months is a good decision cycle. We really believe it's fast. in startup terms, that is already the next finance round. So you have to be there in 3 weeks and come with a feedback, yes or no. And when you openly share that, I think there's a very good chance to get a fruitful collaboration, because we bring with us customers where we can test a lot, because as a startup, you might not have the access to the customers. You bring in great technology, great knowledge, and know-how of the people. If we bring that together, whether we invest or not, we have a clear chance of making something great, and that is what we should aim for.
Lee, how does that relate to the model that you have in Singapore? Because you have such a very specific model.
So in Singapore, like I said, we have two main objectives: cultural transformation, and as well as create value, creating new businesses. On the cultural transformation side, we run workshops and boot camp in the different countries, and then we actually, coming out of those workshops and boot camp, we have specific ideas that we incubate, and we incubate with the countries where employees are actually working on 3-month chunk full time on bringing these ideas into the business unit, and then eventually we'll move this along, eventually transfer into the business unit, and then they move it forward. So on the startup side, we have a program called Collab, where it's our startup engagement program. It's very different from investing in company. If you are a startup, one of the most important things you can do is to get customers as commercial contract. So what we do here is that in the Collab program, we publish 16 problems that MetLife would like to see solved. And the startups apply to solve some of these problems. We pick 8 finalists, which we've been coaching them on how to sell to MetLife. Believe me, that is an art, how you sell to big companies. So we coach them on how to solve those problems and pitch. And next week in Singapore, we have the 8 company pitching. The winner will get a 100K contract, commercial contract, to actually run a pilot and demonstrate that it works. We don't take equity in exchange. It is a commercial contract. And we hope that more than one company will actually have to follow on to do work with MetLife.
Can you give an example of such a question that is being answered in what way by a startup?
Instead of coaching?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I run a 2-hour workshop on why work with the big company and how to work with the big company. So full disclosure, before this job, I was with Siemens. I've been trying to work with startups as a big company, working with startups for too many years to count. And there are a few things. I mean, selling to a big company is very different from selling to your investor. And a lot of startups come not having that mindset. For example, as a big company, every single startup comes to me and say, I'm going to solve your problem. It's going to be better, cheaper, faster. Nobody comes to me and say, I'm going to be slower and more expensive. So, I mean, that's just, and then they will tell you all the benefits of their technology, which quite honestly, if I were in the industry, I already know the benefits. Tell me about fraud reduction. I know what fraud reduction could do for the company. Tell me about integration into legacy system. I know how hard it is and how much money it's going to cost. So advice to startup, when you sell to big company, assume that the people you're talking to knows your problem. What you really need to do is to provide some easy way for them to know what's the insight and what's your secret sauce, and make it believable, but most important, there are barriers that I, as the big company, would care about. Talk about those barriers. That will move you forward a lot faster. Don't talk about, better, cheaper, faster. Because like I said, the advice I give to startup is, if your competitor are going to say the same thing, don't say it. You're just wasting everybody's time. And then, of course, the last advice I give is, I think you mentioned that, ultimately, you are working with people. So make sure that you feel like this group of people, be it the startup or the company, these are people you can work with. Because things are going to change. 2 weeks into it, they're going to say, oh, no, I'm going to do that thing, whatever. So make sure that you have rapport with the people.
I want to second a couple of these points because you made it, especially for this room here, for the startups. It is good to learn how to deal with a large company, and you want to get that contract with the large company. You want to take down the large game there. But you mentioned something very important. Get clients first. Go to the smaller insurance companies. Go to the smaller space. They're nimble. They're more entrepreneurial. They don't have the infrastructure, the legacy systems to speak to. They have smaller operations, so there's less politics. There's less structure, if you will. Less barriers of entry for you. Plus, you get to cut your teeth on the smaller companies. Make the mistakes with the small corporations. Screw up a $20 million insurance company deal. Screw up a $100 million insurance company deal. Don't screw up an $8 billion insurance company deal. Cut your teeth on the smaller deals. And then when you come to us, some of you have brag sheets. You have your clients. You see these clients listed there. You've done business with other people. You understand the hang-ups in your own technology. This speaks to what you were saying before tell us the truth. When you sit down with each one of us, I know the operation of the corporation. I know exactly what your value add is. It's just what you said. Why is it what you're providing? How do you differentiate yourself? There's five analytical groups that have a new scoring model for automobile, or what makes you different? What makes your implementation easier to deal with, or more cost-effective, if you will? We know what you have has value, and a lot of times we're striving for it, and that's what we're looking for when we're meeting all of you. But go get your mistakes out of the way with the small companies before you talk to the larger corporations. 100%. It will make a big difference.
But this is what insurtechs can improve in teaming up with insurance companies. What can incumbents improve? What do you think are the things that, looking backward,
what should
have done much better than to really team up with fintechs, insurtechs, and get more out of it?
Well, I think the reasons for the insurtechs in the first place is because the incumbents didn't take the responsibility upon themselves to change their business models fast enough 20 years ago when these changes were happening. Look at personal automobile. We've talked about that quite a bit. Personal automobile has been doing this for a very long time. And you talk about big data. If I hear someone say big data one more time, I may become nauseous. But insurance has been using big data for many years. That's how we price. We've been working with so much data. But look at personal auto, what they do with the customer experience, the automation, the efficiencies. They've attacked it. They've digitized. Most of them are digitized. If they're not digitized, they really don't exist. So look at the rest of the P&C division. If you look, I know you're talking about health and the other areas, but within P&C, the commercial space, which is where AmTrust is a large player, it was behind the times. I mentioned before disrupting. We saw an underserved niche market, small risks, that were expensive. So if you're a large corporation and you're spending $500 to process each widget, well, you can't afford to write a $500 policy. You just can't process it fast enough. So we took a personal lines approach to small commercial business, and we applied the same things that you're bringing to the table for companies that are still running on mainframes, that are still running on AS400s, and that's new tech to them. It's something from a version from 20 years ago. So you're providing something to them because they weren't responsible 20 years ago to see that this was going to occur, because our business model in insurance has worked for what? Hundreds of years. And we're very slow to adopt because it has worked. Well, the time is at hand. There's no more running from it or hiding from it. Within the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see most things have transitioned. And there's no stopping it.
One thing I like to add to the startup is to actually focus on what is your insight. Don't just talk about problems. There are lots of problems in the world. World peace, big problem. No one would pay money to solve it, or at least the people that really needs to buy it don't have the budget to pay for it. So focusing on problem is not enough. You need to talk about what insights are you bringing to the table, and why and how are you solving this problem because of your insights. And usually if the company gets your insight and they know that it's differentiated, you've really speed up your engagement, because now you focus everything on that insight instead of talking about the generic problems.
Let me once more build on the question, do we as insurance companies have to change when dealing with startup companies? And I surely believe we have to. Yeah? When I look at NDAs, how we write them, Some startup companies cannot even sign it because otherwise they would be out of business. How we construct contracts, that you as smaller companies can participate, that we limit the risk you take on your shoulders, that we share that in a partnership agreement. How we really have responsible people on our side who drive you through our complex organizational structures. Yeah? Because we have multiple layers, multiple departments, and then you have a young company with 10, 14 people. They're basically overwhelmed when they sit in meeting rooms with 20 people. So they need somebody on our side that is really safeguarding them through our processes in order to be successful. And that is what you have to structure. That has to be somewhere in the innovation unit where you have like project managers that drive it. All your documents need to be reviewed and your processes and your decision points.
You have to have your business tour guide, your company tour guide to navigate the waters.
Otherwise it will not happen. No? I've seen companies that basically, they were just by the number of meetings that were offered, they were not able to deliver anything. And these are the things where we can do our homework. We are doing that. I see a lot of positive movements. The only thing I can play back to insurance, set up the processes, because otherwise, even though you have the best innovation company in front of you, they will basically fail within your processes and your documents.
And I think there is also the cultural aspect. On the one hand, the adaptation for change, but what I also see quite often is that, like positively stated, there's insurance carriers mostly have a very strong immune system.
Yes.
The corporate antibodies you're referring to, huh?
Exactly.
For its own survival. Some of the strongest immune systems in the world, actually, is a corporation with over several $billion. It's very strong. It's difficult. You have to involve. This goes back to what he's saying. You have to have a concierge service, if you will. So if you step into our company, someone has to navigate the waters for you, and they have to point out this person's going to be difficult. This person's like this. This person's stubborn. This person's, and you have to be able to get those people, the antibodies, the corporate antibodies, that are coming and kill off that idea, rush in and kill that good idea off. They're doing it to protect the company. Yeah. Some of it's to protect their own territories, but a lot of times it's because we've done this for 20 years, this works, don't change, because I've seen a lot of smart people make big mistakes, so you get that speech. So you have to involve them in the process. And one of the first things you have to do is to, at face value, you have to let them interject their idea into the process. So if it's an underwriter or an actuary, and you come in with a value, let's say you have a new scoring model that you're going to bring to bear, and you have insights, you have a correlation you came up with that's going to drive down your loss ratios, better results. So you'd sit down with the actuary, and the actuary would say, did you think of the impact that a blue-colored bird would have on your model? No, why would we think that? But you have to listen to them, and if you can successfully, it's a goofy idea, but you have to incorporate their idea into your process. If you can do that where they feel like they put their 2 cents in, at least in my experience, that's helped. The people that typically are very, very rigid, dig their feet in, you have to get them involved with the process. Not enough to let them kill it off, but to let them know that they're involved and that you're valuing what their opinion is, because they're doing it out of necessity and out of their own legitimate fear for the good of the company. So if you involve their 2 cents and use their expertise, and that will get some of your, so to speak, from your standpoint, your enemies out of the way and kind of clear the path, because you're getting them involved with the process and they're winning. It's tough sometimes from an egotistical standpoint from you, this is our idea. How could you change what I'm doing? What I have is a perfect solution. But you have to sometimes bend a little bit to get involvement.
Let me build on that, because I think the corporate immune system is always pretty strong, and in insurance it's extremely strong. What we have taken as Ergo as a step, we have really created a company, the Ergo Digital Ventures SE, or AG in German, where we have put the innovation management in all the startup we have founded. So we've already founded 3 companies there in there, but we also have 3 risk carriers in there, 1 for life, 1 for health, 1 for P&C. And then in this thing, you can basically execute as a chief digital officer end to end. And I don't have to ask. So when I say, do I want to work with a startup? And I would ask potentially some of the German or some of the Indian colleagues, they might say, well, Mark, it's not on my priority. This is also kind of immune. But what I could say is we implement it in the frame of digital ventures. From my perspective, it is working pretty good.
So you need to do both models actually, huh?
Yeah, encapsulate it and get it out and have end-to-end decision power. Otherwise, it will be really difficult, because there are a lot of reasons not to collaborate, not to implement.
So to summarize the whole discussion, I would say, okay, it's about digital technologies, but moreover, it's about cultural change.
Absolutely.
It's about testing and learning on both sides,
Yeah.
insurance carriers as well as insurtechs. And the best way is to actually do stuff together and experiment and go through that test and learning cycle together.
Can I add one more thing?
You can.
It's actually about the customer. I think at the end of the day, innovation begins with the customer.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.